As I'm sure you'll recall, we were last noting that even while certain condemnations continue to be made that man is not as conscious, that man is not as alert as he could be, that even should you accept this view, on the other hand, you should be even more impressed over the fact that he can develop, drive, and function amidst the complexities of the modern world while operating at partial strength. We were, I think, specifically noting, as a matter of fact, that it is true, without any doubt, that a man could be more, let's just call it, intellectually alert at any given moment simply by saying to himself, I should be more alert. And right then, he momentarily is more alert. But by saying that he can momentarily, by saying that he can be more alert does not mean that he should be. This is an old game that life has played. Not a trick, it's just part of the growth process of people believing, it's just another variation, but a bit more specific, that we should be better. It is the driving force in a sense of the secondary world. It is the fact that nothing ever succeeds unless it is suicidal, that there is no completion of the ideas, that it is only what we've been calling the primary world, the basic instincts that would drive and keep a human alive, that seem to reach some satisfactory conclusion. To wit, I'm hungry, I eat. Hey, I'm full, if you're sane, and you quit eating. It's only the secondary world. Well, wait a minute, let me think about this. And whatever it is you're trying to think about, if you're just ordinarily sane, this is not an anomalous situation, contraire. This is those right in the front lines of the ordinary first string of life's team out there on the field, is let me think about this, whatever the hell it is, my personal relationships, the way I treat my family, what I should do with life, and you can't ever come to a conclusion. It is the health of life doing that. So by saying specifically, back to this more direct function of the human nervous system, that people are not as alert or as conscious as they can be. Well, as Aristotle, I think, said, that's a fact, Jack. But by saying that you can be more alert, there is a difference between that and then immediately assuming, well, that means you should be. It's all right to assume that, but you are back into a full-fledged secondary life hobby if that begins to drive you. That is the nature of the great mystical quest of all times. That yes, something is wrong, but it's not just the overall sociological or psychological cultural problems of life. It has to do with the individual, and I am off on this great quest, and I do not have a joy buzzer or a whoopee cushion. So mine is not a waste of time. I was referring to the Kyroots to give him some credit. But then the feeling is that I should be more than I am. And it can go into areas that seem to be spiritual and etc., but it's always the same thing. That I should be more alert, because that's one thing that a man can be at any given moment. He could have been that way. It was true 3,000 years ago. If we were on the other side of the blessed world, looking at it from another direction, and you were of another cultural, racial, nationalistic persuasion, it was going on then of men saying we should be more alert. Because that's one thing, you can be more alert. You have got to be outside just even the mainstream of rationale for occultists, if there be such a thing, to take that into the primary world. That's when you get into, well, none of us seem satisfied. I'm sure we could be better. And they all go, yeah, yeah. And they got the leader, the would-be leader says, what we need is to grow another ear. And they all go, hear, hear. Which is another level of hobbies. That is another level of the impossible. Is to start fooling with the primary. Like, well, let's all stick together and think great thoughts or new thoughts, and when we die, we won't lay down and rot. Hear, hear. But back to sort of the mainstream of life's growth is the secondary hobbies that never reach any satisfactory conclusion, but the great one being, I repeat, no matter what it was called, it amounts to this, that they can, anybody can, just any sane person, can be more alert. Just by thinking, I should be more alert. And right then, you are more alert. It is the most beautifully arranged, efficient use of energy. And it's been called all kinds of things, from remembering the names of Buddha, and it's in Hindu literature. It's everywhere. Up until today, that even psychiatry has tried to make some use of it, or psychology, some of these there used to be called pop psychological fads, because it's based on reality, that yes, you can be more alert. But then the tacit part, as always, with man being an unfinished product, is that once you find out there is something you can do, then the human nervous system, being pushed as it is to continue to develop, that becomes immediately synonymous with you should be, or that you must be. But leave it at should be, that's bad enough. That'll give most people the burning guilt. That, well, since you can, then you should. Well, wait a minute, we cannot save the whole world. The people have been starving for years. You can't save the whole world. Well, that's true, sir, but you could help one person. You could devote $5 a day and help one person. Yeah. That means, Jesus, you got me there, because you do. If you think there's any escape from guilt in the city, and I don't know, you must believe, as many people do, that you have the secret holographic plans for the sewers, which there are not any. There is no escape from the sewer. It simply becomes that anything that a man can do that he's not doing becomes immediately synonymous with he should be. And there's nothing wrong. It's not because of some intellectual weakness. It is, again, because of the fact, the healthy fact, that the incomplete state of man makes him continue to be open to the push to change. And so the feeling that, all right, there is one thing I can do, in the middle of life's bourgeoisie mental activities, there is no question beyond that. Well, all right, I could help somebody. I could help one starving person. Then any sane, civilized man can't stop there and go, well, I could, but the hell with them. You can't do that. You're just not sane, you're not civilized, you're not a decent person. But I want you to understand, or that you should see, having nothing to do with helping the hungry and etc., any charitable acts, having to do with the movement of energy, just because at any particular time in your individual life, yours or anybody else's, will it be now, or if we were talking about 5,000 years ago, but just because something can be done does not mean individually now that it should be done. The proof simply being the difference between can be and should be. Because if man should be contributing X amount of his money to help the poor, to help the hungry, if that should be it, that would be it. I was going to go ahead and use the be more alert, but that gets tricky because it does move. But if, in case you think you missed the point, if man should be as alert right now as he can be when he goes, I should be more alert, and then you're more alert, if that's the way he should be, then the can be wouldn't be can be, it would be should be. But I just didn't want you to miss the point, because if you reach that level, if we call that a new level, and that was, let's say, level X2, if you got there, you do realize, don't you? You know the rest, don't you? That once you got there, then if me or somebody, you would finally do it, life would do it, go, wait a minute, you could be more alert than that, and you go, all right, let's see. And you would be. That's it. I guess in some quarters that might be known as futility, but that's among the very dense. Among those happy people with pogo sticks and being able, they understand that is health. That is hearing the heartbeat of America, not Chevrolet, of life. So that which can be is not necessarily what it should be. Of course, on your own, you could go off and imagine that since you can, such as be more alert right now, momentarily, you can't hold it, not under ordinary means, but because you're not supposed to. But you could go off and imagine on your own, since you can operate at partial strength. Since the very things that ordinary people condemn, like, well, something's wrong, humanity is not conscious enough. Individuals and the collectiveness of humanity is not as alert, not as sharp as they could be. It gives me the willies to think about it. That's one view. It should give you the swoons to imagine, all right, if that be true, which I'm admitting, you should also be impressed that you mean that we can send people to the moon. We got people even now supposedly close to figuring out the question of one shoe in the highway. High definition television recordable CDs just on the horizon, electronic horseshoes coming up. That you can do all that on the basis that you're not even as alert as you could be. Now, to have the willies is just to show that, you probably live over in the Fourth Ward next to Willieville. Because you should be just amazed. Well, at least delighted that it can go on like that. But I was going to say, at least on your own, once you understand that, you can, just as a hobby, imagine, all right, well, what might be possible on the basis that we can do this kind of stuff. That we can develop, support, continue to expand this kind of complex technological world, operating only at half speed or some partial strength. Don't worry about half speed, but less than we could be. Then you might imagine, if you want to. I was going to point out that you can if you want to, since I can't stop you. Only one person can stop you, and we're not going into that. There was a set of parentheses I didn't use last time, and I wanted to use it, so. Parentheses aside, colon. At this particular point, I am not even going to mention, I am not even going to infer that you should tie what we're talking about tonight to a Kyroot that showed up the last time we were meeting that said, and I quote more or less, that domesticated creatures are only domesticated as long as you have their attention. I don't want any of you, I would not infer, I just wanted to be sure. The only reason I bring it up, besides having that extra set of parentheses, is I want to make sure that none of you would just slip off in some accidental way that could be harmful, and try and in any way connect that to the thinking processes of the human, Of course, that was not, I don't think Kyroot has yet to ever send me a check to help it for my expositions of what he says, but any of you who've never noticed it have nice hairy children. They're only domesticated. You can only sit around and hug and kiss them, and them look at you and you talk to them, and them, if it's a dog, cock their head, and they'll only be domesticated as long as you got their attention. Right? You get them out. You got a bloodhound or a good sheepdog, and you turn them loose, and they're out there, and they begin doing doggy things. In a sense, that is, begin to track and run and have fun. Notice then, unless you have I don't even want to think about it, unless you've got a dog that you've had a terrible influence on, just generally speaking. Speaking about a dog, a good middle class, mainstream dog, like people, that dog that will sit there and look at you, and it's you imagine you talk to it and you ask it and you think, well, the damn thing is awfully close to being able to grasp what I say, which is fine, but you get it out and it starts doing doggy things. In other words, you're not sitting there in your little room in your apartment with a dog, and it's just you and them. They got nothing to do, and he's tired of pacing, and he'll sit. If you don't have the dog's attention, that dog is no longer a domesticated creature. There is the difference. It is simply a fact, and I just wanted to be sure, because I was afraid some of you might try and think about that, and God forbid that you in any way try to tie that to your own attention and it being domesticated in some way that, well, yes, I have some control over what I'm doing. That is another Kyroot, at least an addendum pointed out, that you can file that under whatever sensation that seems to arouse in you. Nobody seemed to have much reaction to that. That means the inference being, I will speak for him again, is you can file that under whichever place, if you've heard any of it, is about, I don't like that at all, or else perhaps, wow, hey, that's okay. So I'll leave it to you. I just didn't want to infer that just because you might lose the attention of your ordinary domesticated mind, I'm not inferring would be either a good or a bad thing, unless you want a regular city level, street level diagnosis. And of course, if you're ordinary, the diagnosis is grave, because that's known as losing one's mind in the city. That's when your friends and neighbors, if you have any, decide that you are not the kind little hairy pet neighbor that they thought you were, and that you're possibly, at least metaphorically, rabid At any rate, you can expect to knock on the door. Assuming your neighbors are still sane, you can expect that someone, probably from your local, at least the county government, will come see you. I don't want to frighten you, but if you see them with a net, well, I guess you can always do this. You can look at the size of the net and then look at the size of your dog and then look at you and decide who they might be there to counsel with. But onward. That sort of brings us up to speed, which is always good and leaves us 4 or 5 minutes. Well, regarding what we're talking about, consider this, that just as the ordinary, secondary 3D world is actually run by, it is run from a more complex dimension, literally, of simultaneously extant, different evolutionary time zones we've already gone through. Anybody didn't hear it, it's not all that weird. It is simply that within you and within humanity, within a city, within a group of people, within the secondary world of life, is not one stage. The progress, just by ordinary views, is not operating, for instance, on Central Standard Time. Central Standard's going on, Pacific Time's going on, Greenwich Mean, every possible evolutionary time zone, that is, of where people are on this planet, is operating simultaneously. And those of you, of course, that get good and are not subject to serious developments of the willies, understand it's going on in you, which is one reason the popularity of drugs, besides making you think louder, is that you can shift over into time zones that you normally wouldn't be in. Wherein you go, what you looking at? You know, God, I'm sick of you, Jesus, that sort of thing. But at any rate, the 3D, the ordinary 3D life, what I want you to see, is run by. We're talking about a three-dimensional world. For those of you who might be just tuning in after a couple of beers, speaking symbolically, not even metaphorically, just symbolic. A three-dimensional world is run at least by a 5 or 6 dimensional something or other. Just a little parable. At any rate, you have a 3D world run from and by a more complex realm, wherein simultaneously extant different evolutionary time zones are operating. In other words, all at one time, and it's not either proceed, succeed, not one over the other, it is simply there at a more complex level. Trust me. Figuratively speaking. That being a fact, then the ordinary human mind is reflecting that. That the operations of the ordinary mind is reflecting that. In that, your ordinary thinking is ranging across the complete temporal spectrum all the way from yesterday and last year up until next week and forever. Don't lose your place. We're still talking about how we're about to, of why there is no great need to think about what's going on right now. Well, it's tied to that observation, that condemnation that men are not as alert as they could be. Because the thing about it is, all of you, I mean, it's no secret that you surely got it from last week, or I'll repeat it. Simply what we're saying, you can tell somebody you could be more alert. And they go, well, how? You know, what drugs or what trick? And you say, no, all you got to do is say, I should be more alert. If the person is halfway sane, they go, I should be more alert. And for a second, they're more alert, and they should be aware of it. You don't know what to make of it, and then you lapse back into something. And what do you lapse back into? You lapse back into an individual reflection of the fact that this three-dimensional life is run for and by a more complex realm, wherein different time zones operate simultaneously, not one over the other. It is a simultaneous operation. Simply look at the planet Earth, and you know this. Right now, if it's 8 o'clock here, it's 9 o'clock somewhere else, it's 10 o'clock somewhere else, go in the other direction, and you don't find anything strange about that. You can explain it. I mean, if you didn't sleep through 10th grade science, You understand? Well, that's the way it is because of the spatial movements of the planet in relationship to the sun, etc. Right. That is all operating. That right now you can holler, it is 9 o'clock. I am sane. I have my my expensive watch. It is 9 o'clock. And you call up Bucharest, and somebody over there says, and don't make me do my Romanian imitation. English is... And somebody over there says, I am equally as intelligent and as alert as you are, and I say 5 on you. They talk like that in Romania. 5 on you, it is not 9 o'clock. It is, I guess I set my foot in it, it is 6 o'clock in the morning. Tomorrow. You go, what do you mean tomorrow? It's now, it's 9 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock Monday night, and they say it's 6 o'clock a.m. on Tuesday. All right, you understand that is not anything to argue about, that is true. It is also true, and you can see it, it's not a theory, it's just a fact, that same thing is happening in the secondary world, not just the physical spatial world, that the evolution of humanity is still extant. There are places on this planet in the secondary world, in the intellect of man, that it's still 6 o'clock yesterday instead of 6 o'clock today. It is still there. But it's not just an attack on some poor group of people in Little Rock or New Guinea. No. Not unless you realize that Arkansas and the South Pacific exist where? In your own nervous system. It operates there simultaneously. Once you see that, which I don't know how you can help but see it. All right, so you can help but see it. But I don't, figuratively speaking, if you can help but not see that, then you understand that the way this works ordinarily, while it's being condemned that it's not as alert as it should be, the alertness, what it does is bring it right here. It's when you say, well, I should be more alert. That there you are working at your little job and you almost cough your finger. And the steward says, I've told you by God, straighten up. Watch what you're doing. And you realize if that didn't frighten you enough that you're about to lose one of your important digits, that him hollering, hey, watch it. And you become more alert for a second. Watch what you're doing. You're right. What does it do? And I'm not trying to be, as you know, in any way some kind of pseudo-metaphysicist about this, but it brings your attention right there. Just simply that. Yeah, I got to watch it. I was daydreaming. My mind was wandering. All those descriptions are the same thing. All it is saying is I wandered into another one of those always extant, one of those always present different time zones in me. That's what daydreaming is. If a man was sharp enough, there's no reason for any man to do it, but he almost coughed his finger, and somebody saw it, and he realized it, and they said, you got to stay alert. You can't work over here in this kind of machine and do that. And if you jumped out suddenly behind a lathe machine and said, well, what were you thinking about? And he goes, I was thinking about that. I got a date with that new, that girl that just moved down here. I just thinking about what I'd be doing. Or I was just thinking about last night. That guy at the bar that, turned around to me and said, what you looking at? The point is, his mind, his attention, in some way, nothing wrong, was ranging across that full temporal spectrum, going everywhere. From last year, last week, all the way to infinity. To next week, tomorrow night, forever. That is the proper range of the mind. But I want you to see, there have been people as a corollary to condemning men not being as alert as they could be by pointing out that one of the problems is that they will not focus their attention on the great eternal now. All right? I just point out that is part of bringing your attention more in focus, but rather than saying, well, hey, that's right, we should be more conscious now. All right, let's say we got no complaint with that. All right, okay. Again, though, you should be impressed. Wow, come to think about it. Guys are starting wars. Guys are trying to start peace. People are running great services somewhere, and thousands of people on their knees going through some procedure. Apparently, praying to great cosmic forces, running this great machinery, atomic plants, and most of the people's minds are in next week or last night. Rather than being concerned, you should be amazed. How great. What a wonderful arrangement. Because if you can see that, I assume that you wouldn't stop and think, what a wonderful brain. What a wonderful arrangement. For, without any doubt, you don't have to look as far as NASA and technical complexities of the nth order, just for everyday secondary life, the collective life of man. For a collective existence, you simply do not have to give much direct, immediate thought to your own individual life at any given moment. You simply do not. And it's not any point to which a person can be converted, but you need to be aware of the fact, rather than, which probably some of you have been affected one way or the other, the thinking I should be in some way directing my attention. I should be working on some kind of process, which I'm not saying is without any validity. But first off, you should see that to live a collective life, that is, an ordinary life, for you to be a respectable, ordinary thinker, does not require that you give much, that you give much immediate, direct thought to what you're doing. Just realize it, rather than saying, oh, because it's just another hobby, it's another form of guilt, to go, that's terrible. I've lived my life mostly in a dream. From one view, true. True. But rather than, are you going to be one of the, you're not going to learn from that man that Kyroots mentioned that he stored despair on the ceiling? No, I want it down here where I can get to it. Hey, your wish is despair's command. No problem about that. Despair will not. Did Shakespeare say that? Not Shakespeare. Despair from the concerned will not flee. I don't know. If you want to suffer, you got no problem, is the point. Yeah, but says somebody, but wait, this is serious business. This is not just some kind of pseudo-suffering. This is real suffering. Because I'm just sure that I've just wandered around, I've wasted most of my life just operating at partial strength. All right, from one view, correct. But if you just simply stay there, then all you're going to do is finish out with a different kind of hobby. It's really the same hobby, but you can think, no, it's a different hobby. Up until I read such and such book, up until I saw such and such lecture, I just kind of stumbled through life just, doing whatever I wanted to. Of course, people say that until they read a book or saw something, but it's mainly they got old enough that their hormones begin to slow down, if you don't know the truth. But that sounds so crude. It's the obvious always does, that nobody wants to deal with that. No, it's not just that. No, it's not just that. I have learned something from my experience. You're getting friggin' old is all it is with ordinary people. Yeah, but I used to be, I had such, and it doesn't matter what they say after that, because I'm telling you what it is, but at any rate, that, I know nobody wants to much think about that, especially any of you people over 30 or so. The collective life of being able to function does not require that you give any particular thought to it. And I was going to say, rather than, all you're going to do is pick up a new hobby to say, well, I reached a certain age and I realized I have lived X amount of years. I've lived 20 years, 30 years, and I did not really devote my attention to matters of importance. I did not try and hold my attention. I did not try and refine or raise my consciousness. I just kind of stumbled through life. And then you back into this kind of tacit, it's just still the variation of being an ordinary unfinished person, of, oh, I've got to do better. Time is running out. My God, I'll die in another 20 years. Women won't even look at me in another, Jesus, what time is it? I don't know. Taking a male view and a female, I assume, is, I'll be magnanimous and say from probably as bad. I don't want to think about it. It simply turns into a kind of extension of the hobby of going, well, I have got to do better. Rather than that, simply see, what do you mean do better? You have been an attorney, a physician, a dentist, a used car salesman, and made a damn good living, drove back and forth to work, took up boating, skiing, skydiving, bowling, read a book or two, can operate the remote or set your VCR and make it work. You've done all of these things for 20 or 30 years and it suddenly strikes you, I have lived only at partial strength. All right, let's say you have. But don't, you're wasting your time then to go, oh, I have got to straighten up. Because all you're doing is wearing out. It is simply, I said I wasn't going to do it, but hell, time's running out. Anybody can hear that. You're simply getting old. You just got to ignore that. It's just an extension of the hobby to say, well, I got to do better. Rather than that, if you do reach such a point, is just stop and ponder, reflect. It's always good to reflect, anywhere up to 10 or 15 seconds. Is look on the past, I'll give you that much, and reflect on the past that it strikes you, I have lived with only partial attentiveness to life. And I have done it for 30 years. But before you go, oh my God, go ahead and do, if you got to, 5 seconds of reflection, you should look back on it and go, holy Jesus. What a guy. Oh. That's all it's worth. Is Jesus. Am I a sweet guy or not? Am I a walking piece of work? Me and everybody else. And then forget it. You have got, because you're not going to change that level of the way the human mind operates. That is why we keep referring to it as a revolution or something unnecessary. Because you can, certainly, it's just another hobby. I assume all of you hear this, but now you can be struck by a book, by a lecture, by a moment of enlightenment while believing you saw either a flying saucer or perhaps a jet plane that had reasonable passenger prices. Something strange. And of course, I already told you the truth. If you're ordinary, it's just your damn hormones getting old. If you're a man, your testosterone is dropping, and suddenly you think, I am having certain urges to become a philosopher. In your wet dreams. At any rate, I just wanted to point out that there's no doubt it can become an interesting hobby. The world is full of it. There are even monasteries, there would be mystical schools and cults throughout history that had minimal requirements that a man had to be 50 years old or 60 years old. That is, they had things that sounded fine, that, well, to come here and to try and pursue a communication with the gods, to get in touch with the cosmic forces, you cannot be a child. You cannot be just a green young twig in life. You must go out there and fight the good fight. You must be able to raise a family, succeed in life, mature. And all it's saying is you got to go being horny. That's the basis of it. It's saying that your hormones have got to begin to die or we don't want to screw with you. We're all a bunch of 50 and 60-year-old guys. We don't some guy in here that keeps saying, where's the Playboys? Don't you guys ever have any fun? Does anybody ever slip in any women or any booze? I don't want that. Because inside their own nervous system, they're looking for a monastery. After that, back to where, for the third time, I'll finish it. It's not that is not without any validity in the city. It's as valid as anything else, and it does become a good hobby. But you must see what it is. Just to say that, all right, I reached a point that one night I had some kind of moment of epiphany, or maybe 2 moments. And I suddenly realized that I should be doing something that I have not been as alert. I have not lived in the great eternal now. I have not held my attention to the matters of importance. Okay. And they say, and so I've decided now I will read books, I will meditate, I'll do whatever it is, and I will try and pull my attention into living each moment. Each precious moment. Now that I'm 50. Each precious moment that the gods have given me. All right, but do you understand, from a revolutionist view, from any sort of extraordinary view, you must be able to feel it yourself. It's just an extension of the hobby. People do not undergo, they say, I went some moment of epiphany, or I suddenly realized life is not just to get bigger and bigger sports car and younger women. It's to do something serious with one's life. That becomes a hobby, but they do not undergo any change other than the hormones wearing out. The point being that even when those people who apparently have undergone some change, or say they have, people that will externally display some, I'll admit, serious alteration in behavior, that a man goes, well, all right, I'm 50, I can retire early, I'm going to. And I'm sorry, Bernice, I'm going to move to Kyoto, and I'm going to go into a monastery, and I'm going to meditate. People do that. But you must feel it in your own nervous system. Because the other side of the world, and monasteries exist in your own nervous system, and you should be aware of it if you've got no business listening to this, and you're probably not. That does not change their nervous system. They may go do it, and there may be an alteration externally in what they're doing. That is, they may pack up and leave and go climb a mountain, go find some monastery, but that does not change this. It simply is an extension of the hobby of, well, I have not done all that which I should. Because if you go to the monastery, we're back to this, as you should know, and the more, if you play with degrees, the more that you found somebody apparently involved in some sort of personal, mystical struggle, the more that they had any sanity left, the more quickly they would admit if you said, well, you've been over here meditating now and studying these great secret works or whatever they're doing and doing these rituals, have you found it? And they would say, no, I haven't. But are they disturbed? That's why it's a hobby. That's why it's successful. You mean you have not reached the full state of enlightenment, or whatever they call it? He'll go, oh, heavens no. Even our head monk. Wait a minute, you mean not him either? Well, certainly not. And they'd look at you like, what kind of boob are you? Although all words belie it, because it is the needs of life itself, no one finds any dysfunction to the fact that the secondary world does not even recognize a matter of success. It's just not really part of their vocabulary. Oh, I know they know the word. But you ask anybody, all the way from the temporal world of politics and economics and anything else to religious and metaphysical, mystical, artistic realms, and you ask, all right, what is it you want to do with life? Whatever they say. Want to save humanity, want to feed the poor, want to help people raise their consciousness, want to make life better, whatever it is, if they're sane, if they're out there working for life, and you say, well, have you succeeded? They're going to say, aren't you the same boob that was asking those people in that monastery if they've ever reached enlightenment? It's not even part of the vocabulary. It is only the ordinary that then turn upon themselves and each other and say, wait a minute, we failed again. Oh, woe is us. Well, let's go to bed and we'll start again tomorrow. It's only, who else would do otherwise? And we got the end, and so I'll, as always, have to point out, the only person who would do otherwise, their name is us. The name is a revolutionist.